Good morning, everyone. Cindy Island here in Leander, Texas. And I am so happy today to be able to do a garden tour with my friend and neighbor, Dr. David Reeves. And he has graciously allowed us to come and look all through his garden. So we are in Central Texas, and we have been in the blazing heat, I mean, over 100 degrees for weeks now, and we're still here. We're still surviving, and so is his beautiful yard. So we're going to take a walk, and he's going to point out for us what's making it and what you can do too. You're not going to believe the beautiful specimens that he has here. I do have to say, you have been working in this garden for over 20 years. A lot of these things are well established, and he does have some new things that made it through our horrific freeze, and but a lot of his older things are making it through our incredible freezes, and it's probably because they're so well established. So, without any further ado, let's take a look in Dr. Reeves' beautiful yard and find out what is making it in this incredible heat. Here.
Well, let's look at the front door. We've got a couple of nice sized pots over here. If you look at the area of the kind of the front door and the pots, I've got a sotol, which is in a huge pot, but it does really well. I don't have to water them that often. If I remember, maybe every other week, I put some water in and then the foxtail fern, obviously, in the front area. But they've been there. Foxtail ferns, sometimes it gets too, if I don't cover them in the winter, but they're pretty reasonable to replace. And it just gives a little bit of something in this corner that makes it give it a little bit more attention, a little bit more of a pop.
Yes, yes.
You can see some of also the Mexican feather grasses, and then obviously the blue plumbago is a big pretty thing. You don't see a lot of blues. You see yellows, you see reds in Texas, but you definitely can enjoy the blue plumbagos when they kind of bloom out. So if we want to kind of come over this area, we can look at the front, which is, I just recently redid the front area. I had to have a little work done on some of my stuff. And so I've got a lot of the dwarf Yopon hollies there. You can see some of those, and they will grow to a pretty reasonable size, maybe 3 to 5 feet in diameter and 3 to 5 feet high. So they'll look like little mounds of dwarf Yopon when they get to that level. Obviously, you can also see right here is one of the U types. These are all on drip irrigation right now. As I redid them, I decided to go ahead and do the drip rather than just spraying the mulch, because it's so much more economical when we struggle with water in Central Texas so much.
Oh, yes.
And secondly, it's a lot easier too, because it gets exactly what it needs. It used to be a fountain in the backyard, and it cracked so it wouldn't hold water anymore. But what I did was just make it a little bit of a succulent bed, and you can see the succulents doing all right for the middle of the summer. It gets partial sun, partial shade, different varieties, and it's fun because you can just plop one in, and they do so well. A lot of the succulents will propagate themselves too, which is really kind of a cool thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. If you look over here too in the front, you can see a different type of Japanese maple, which is a little bit different. You normally see a larger leaf on a Japanese maple, and it's usually a reddish type of color. This is a Shiga Shagira, and it's a beautiful plant. It's slow growing, as are most of the Japanese maples, but it's interesting variety, and I
It
like the
is.
cultivar of it.
I love the limbs. It's
Yes.
just so interesting.
Uh-huh.
And this has made it through all of our freezes.
It
How
has.
old is this one?
This one's probably about 4 or 5 years old, so it is a slow grower, but it does really well.
And you've got it in this good shelter here, so
Right.
that probably helps it. Do you
It
cover
does.
it in a freeze?
I've never covered. I only thing I've covered one time was in the back, and we'll talk about that
Okay.
later.
So I have always been afraid to grow any of these Japanese
Maples.
maples, but
Uh-huh.
they're apparently you
Yeah,
can certainly do it.
they do well.
And
This
this is
is
our
this is a firecracker fern.
firecracker friend. Look at these fun
You have
things.
little
I'm sure the
blooms that come on there.
hummingbirds love
Oh, they
those.
do. The hummingbirds love all those little reds, and kind of suckle on those a little bit.
And I see that you've replaced a lot of your grass. You've got some good rock here and mulch. So we're trying to have less grass, so this really works out, and it looks just so pretty here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think just having more of the rock obviously is less maintenance. It's less cost every year to replace the mulch, and so forth. So, it just makes it, it's pretty nice.
Yes,
You can see here's a lot of the different the salvias, which traditionally in Texas they do so well. They're kind of a native,
yes.
and they do really super. And some Gulf muhly grasses. They do okay. They got a little bit of a bloom that's going to come out, but I'm hoping later in the year we'll have those beautiful pink fronds that kind of come out
Oh,
on
this
them. It'll
is the
be really
pink
pretty.
variety.
This is the
Oh,
pink
that'll be
variety.
gorgeous.
Yep. And then this is interesting. This is a miniature lantana, and again, when it's springtime and when it's got good water supply, it has beautiful white blooms on it, which is, and it doesn't. It's not a trailing. It's not a spreading. It just kind of keeps its compact shape, which is really fun.
And what color are the blooms?
They're usually white,
White.
so it kind of offsets these. The salvias mostly I have are the red variety,
Mm-hmm.
Salvia greggii, but there's also I've got a few of the Henry Dulberg sages over there that are pretty too. But this is a nice red and white variety. You can see going into red, you can see the red yuccas there,
Yeah.
and those are so nice. I love the hummingbirds love those. The bees love those. It's good for the pollinators. They can suckle again on those little blooms and get their
Yes.
nectar that they need. And most of this in the background, you can see there's some nandina, some Gulf Stream nandina, which are very hardy in this part of the country, and then a lot of the sages, different kinds of the salvia or the salvias back there that do really well. But
Now, do you trim your nandinas down, or is this a dwarf variety?
no, I trim them, but they
Okay.
don't get much bigger than that. And
Okay.
there's a bunch of over by the actually the garage. They're just lined up. But I have my yard crew kind of help me with trimming some of these because they get pretty large if you don't give them
Right.
a little cut back.
Wait.
Okay. So if you look at this Rosa Sharon, it's an interesting cultivar because not only does it have kind of purplish blooms, but it will also have some white blooms, and even if you see over here, actually some pinker blooms, which is
Isn't
kind
that
of unusual.
interesting?
Yeah, usually, you have one color on a Rose of Sharon or an Althea, but in this case, it's a mixed hybrid, and it has three different colors that come out in it when it's blooming.
How interesting.
Yeah, I love it. It's a really good one, and originally I put it in because it's one that the deer didn't eat very much, so that
Right.
was a that was a
Right.
big
That's
factor
all.
too.
Anything that you can talk to us about that the deer don't eat, please
Yeah,
point those out.
yeah. Well, you'll notice most of the stuff in the front, the deer kind of stay away from.
Right.
And in the backyard, I have a little bit more flexibility because I've got my fence. But when I first moved in, a lot of the stuff would just be eaten overnight.
Right.
So now
Right.
it's a little bit better. And this is obviously just a little yopon tree that I've kind of made into more of a topiary. It originally was kind of a wild form, but after that one ice storm, I cut it back, and it's come out beautiful. I really enjoy
Wow.
it. Yeah.
I love, and this is going to stay about this size.
I'm going to try to keep it. You've
Uh-huh.
seen some of those in Texas where you see the actual topiaries that have been made, whether it's round or whatever. I'm going to try to keep it about that size. I think
Right.
that's a good size for my yard and so forth. But
Before we get too far away, I want to talk about this beautiful um, plant in your stone planter
yeah,
here. What is this?
so this is sedums, and sedums do so well. You can see the blooms that are out on this cultivar, and you can see a couple other different little cultivars in there. They have the kind of the reddish variety, and then also the beautiful green sedums,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is so hardy, and it just does well. We'll see another example of that when we get to the backyard.
And
We've
I
got
see you have a little drip here, so you
yep,
don't have to
exactly
remember to water it.
right.
How often do you water this?
Well, I probably water it with the drip irrigation only once a week here in Leander, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But I'll come back out and give it another little drink midweek or something like
So
that, or
2 times a week,
two times a
probably.
week I give it a drink. Yeah.
And is it okay in the full sun?
Yes,
Look at this.
it does really well. I mean, eventually in the afternoon it will start to get some shade, so it gets
Hmm.
full morning sun,
Okay.
and then the afternoon it does get some shade. So what we see here is a desert willow, and it's an interesting little story about the desert willow. It was actually planted on the far side of the house, and I didn't like it there because it needed a little bit more sun. So I actually just took and I kept trying to kill it and trying to kill it. It keep coming back. So finally, I just dug up a little bit of it and I transplanted it here, and it's done really well. It likes that sun. In the background, you can see kind of the differentiation between the rocks and the mulch, which is kind of meandering through almost like a dry creek bed. And it's very appropriate because in Leander, we have a lot of streets that meander around. Okay, so it's kind of like meandering Leander, and
How clever. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's kind of a neat little thing. And it does reduce the amount of mulch I have to put down every year as
Right.
well,
And water usage.
and water usage as well.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
This is just beautiful. And while I'm here, look at the number of beautiful live oaks he has on his property. How large is this yard?
It's about 3/4 of an acre, which
Okay.
when I first moved in here, my mom said, "Oh, you'll be tired of all this gardening in about 5 years." And it's still 22 years, and I'm still not tired of it. So I just wish I had more time to spend out here in this, but the heat kind of restricts that a little
Right,
bit.
but you've got it so low maintenance now that until we get into the backyard, let's save that thought because
Okay.
he has a lot going on there. And by the way, I am going to make this a two-part video because there is so much to see here. So we're standing in the front street view of Dr. Reeves' garden. What do we have here, Dr. Reeves?
Well, as I mentioned a little earlier, I have a lot of this theme of the bamboo muleys. And bamboo muley grass is a very hardy combination between kind of bamboo and muley grasses, but it isn't invasive at all. But it is a beautiful show, and you can see it glistening with the sun. What's really neat is when you get a little breeze, which we don't have much of today. It will kind of you can see it kind of floating in the breeze, which is really a pretty little thing
It
to
is
see.
such an eye catcher. I walk by his yard every morning on my morning walk, and it just takes my breath away when I see it.
This is a nice little hedge that's been there a long time. It's a dwarf Buford holly, and again, it does
Ah,
really well in the heat, in the sun, in the winter. It's been there for probably close to probably 18 years or so, and it kind of shelters some of my electrical boxes, but
yes. It-
don't tell the electric people that.
So if you want a great plant to hide all your ugly equipment, this is it right
Yeah,
here. This
it's really
beautiful
pretty.
holly.
It does really well. Dwarf Buford hollies. As we walk around, you can see more of the. Now you can see kind of the sun going glistening through the bamboo muley. It's really a
So
pretty
beautiful.
pretty appearance. We
Yes.
can walk on to now this other bed, which is a mix of a couple of different varieties. So you can see in the back you have the Turk's caps, which are the pink variety of Turk's caps, and or the red variety. I'm sorry, red variety of Turk's caps, and they've been there a long time, and they really like this location. They've really thrived, and you can see the size of those over the
They're
years.
beautiful.
Obviously, it's a little bit dry here in Texas right now, limiting our water, but you can, oh yeah, there's a pretty picture of that. Nice.
It looks like a Turk's cap.
Yep. And then the front is Dallas red lantanas, which now currently aren't really blooming, but when they bloom, it's got that beautiful red bloom on it, so it looks nice with the Turk's
Oh,
cap in the
yes.
back and the Dallas red in the front.
So
So
this is going to bloom in the spring and the
it
fall.
does, and it'll come back in the fall and be a lot more vigorous with its foliage and stuff.
I love how
Um,
you have repetition. So you don't put just one thing in. You just put it in and you repeat it, and it just really nice and draws your eye across your whole
right.
yard.
Look, a couple holes there. It looks like my armadillo fend has been
Yes,
back.
we have armadillos here in Texas, and so every morning we come out and we think they're helping us. Maybe they're finding some pesky old grubs to eat.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Here's an interesting little variety too. This is called a showy jasmine, which it has really pretty yellow blooms on it in the spring. And it's been around a long time. I've transplanted it a couple times and it continues just to do well. It gets trimmed back probably every couple months, but it's just something to fill the space, and it's hardy. So that's why I like it so
Hardy,
much.
yes,
Yep.
made it through our freezes. About how long do you think this has been here?
Oh, that one's probably been there about 15 years, I imagine.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, on the side of the house, I've had different things a long time go along. You can see there's a Japanese maple. I think that's a bloodgood variety. And then the hedge that kind of goes up against the house there is a waxleaf ligustrum. And they're very hardy in this portion of the country. along the side of the house, I've had different varieties of things go along. I have a few of the a little bit of giant leopard plants, and this is a Buiton or something. I can't even pronounce it. It's a French name, but I've transplanted that little sucker so many times, and it just keeps going. And then obviously you see the blood good Japanese maple. You know, it used to have a lot more shade, but the winter storm kind of did some pretty significant damage on my tree. It's still doing okay though. You know, you can see it's still hanging in there pretty tough.
So it would have preferred shade?
It prefers a little bit of shade, yeah.
Okay.
And
And you have it sheltered close to the house,
I,
which may help it?
that helps it too, right?
Okay.
And it used to be I had some trees that came out pretty far out here, but as you can see with the storm, I lost a whole half of that tree. It's actually strapped back together, holding it so it grows back together.
Oh,
So,
and this will grow back together?
yep, that's
How
what
interesting. He has an actual strap tied down, and here's the crack.
uh-huh. That was one whole limb that kind of just the half of the tree
Wow.
basically cracked
And
off.
you had an arborist come and tell you that this is going to work.
Yep.
How interesting.
So it's working, and this strap is very, very tight,
Uh-huh.
so it's holding it all together. In a
Uh-huh.
couple years, I'll leave it there a couple years, and it should be well enough to actually remend itself there. So let's hope.
Well, and it's just as happy as can be up here. It's got
Yeah,
plenty of
new
great
growth.
branches and leaves and new growth, so I feel like it's working.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves, for allowing us to tour your beautiful gardens. We are learning what can make it in the scorching heat of Texas and the incredible ice storms we've been having. It's very encouraging to see that you can have a beautiful garden even with these situations. A lot of it is, figuring out how often to water things, and he does have the drip, the mulch, the rock, but altogether he has made a beautiful garden. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's fun to show everybody what I've done over the last 22 years or whatever, but it's
Yes,
a lot of work, but it's still fun.
it is fun. It is fun. For those of us who enjoy this kind of thing, it's fun. And now, please stay tuned because there's going to be part 2 where we tour David's backyard, and it is even better. And there's roses back there, beautiful roses, and they're not, that fantastic right now because it's so hot and their bloom time has passed. But would I be able to come back in the fall maybe and do a rose tour?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And the variety that's back there is just very hardy for Texas. It's beautiful when it blooms.
Oh, so that's so encouraging. You can even have roses. He has camellias. He has all the things that I didn't think I could grow. So let's come back, join me again, and we will see part 2.